And here's what's tricky about this ring before we move on, is this is the ring that looks like progress. When you spend too much time here, but in reality, you're pretty far away from the customer and their need. Where if you're going to be going for a value price point and it's got to be the cheapest, then realize that supply chain becomes really important. The choices you make on outsourcing, whether they're contractors, whether they're employees, whether they're fractional, whatever you decide, this is why all these four things are in this ring. Those are software. Those three are going to be, I think, 90% of the people watching this are going to need to deploy those three. If I could rename that the Godfather principle, keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer. This is the most dangerous ring in the bullseye because...
Good morning, inventors, and how are you? Look, just a quick note before the show. Season 2 of the Invent With Me podcast is brought to you by the Invent With Me Patreon. Odds are you've been listening to the show for a while now and you need more information. I don't typically agree with a paywall unless it's a situation in which there's not enough time in the show or there's just more tender love and care needed to get you to the successful point with your invention where you want to be. The sign-up process is incredibly straightforward. Just go into the show notes, click on the link for the Patreon, and sign up via their safe payment platform. $6 a month connects you to the Discord, which is stacked with current inventors as well as other professionals and myself. And together, all of us are going to make sure that your dream becomes a reality. All right, guys, remember, I took the punches so you don't have to, and enjoy this episode brought to you by the Patreon. Thanks. Hello, guys, and welcome to the Invent With Me podcast, where each week we guide aspiring inventors and product creators to turn their innovative ideas into reality. And on today's episode, the 4 steps to transform your invention idea into a viable business. And with me in the studio today to help facilitate, fractional chief marketing officer with over 100 product launches under his belt, Jason is an expert in being disruptive and breaking the norms that separate good inventors from great inventors. Welcome back, Jason. How you doing, man?
It's good to be here. I'm really excited about this. Going to dive into it. It's a great formula.
This is a really important episode because for so long, our listeners have been asking for something tangible. We like to riff on this podcast, but rarely are we kind of taking a step-by-step process. And you have something laid out, engineered and crafted, a great formula for inventors to define what is success going to look like with my invention. But I'm skeptical. How do you really have the gall to say that this is something you can nail down in 4 steps? Is it that simple?
Everyone listening to this knows there is a lot to pay attention to.
Yeah.
You've got a number of different things, but over the past 25 years or so, what I've been able to do is simplify it down into kind of 4 zones. But the whole idea is you can't hit the bullseye if you don't know where the target is. And we want to start at the center, and then we want to work outward from there. And each ring that we go outward, we learn a little bit more. We make sure to catch everything, but not everything's equally important. Things closer to the center are more important. Things as you get further out are a little bit less important, but it makes sure we don't forget anything.
I really like this idea of the bullseye. You sent this to me, and I feel like I could really benefit from the bullseye, even for this podcast. For anything I'm trying to define a TA, target audience, demographic, an execution plan. So walk me through the bullseye from the beginning, I guess.
We're going to actually use torque strap.
Sweet.
So real invention, but you're listening to this with your own idea. You can take this format and just walk through it yourself. And I would invite you to just print out a blank of the bullseye or just draw it on your whiteboard and start to actually work through it. And you don't want to draw it too big because you want to make sure that in each area you've got just a sentence or a few words. Because when you're done, you want to be able to know, like, this is my strategy. These are all the things I need to pay attention to on one piece of paper or on one whiteboard. And it's not some book that you hand to someone that no one's going to pay attention to. So we're going to start with torque strap, and we're going to aim for the center of the bullseye right away, which must be all the time. You can probably tell where I'm going with this. Your target customer and the pain, the gain, or the job they're trying to do. Okay. So what is the number one thing? So how would you answer that, Grant? With torque strap, what is the primary thing a torque strap customer is trying to do, not like the product that you want to sell them. That's next. What is the job they're trying to do? What's the pain they've got? What's the gain they want to achieve?
I'll say definitely they want an alternative to ratcheting, but I'll throw you a zinger. I'm also torn. Should I just attack the safety aspect? So I kind of have two bullseyes. Do I put them both in the center?
Awesome question. What I would do this, because the bullseye is such a simple thing to do. You could complete one of these bullseyes in about 10 minutes.
Okay.
You just kind of hit that. I do two of them. You might discover that, okay, with both of these, there are just a couple of different things that I would do. But what it does is it forces you to think about, hey, when I get all the way out to my competition, which is in the outer ring, and we'll talk about why that is when we get there. But let's say there's an alternative to ratcheting or a safety angle. Who do I probably have two very different competitors with both of those value propositions. On the ratcheting is pretty easy, but when I'm competing with safety, like, what are you competing there with? Is it different? And should you be thinking differently about everything? That's why it has to be at the center. Because that forces you to think of everything else around the bullseye is forced to think from the customer's perspective. What's their problem they're trying to solve? Be simple. Have just one thing in your bullseye that you're aiming for. You might discover you've got 3, 4, or 5 bullseyes, and you realize, you know what? This one's the most compelling, and it will tell you which of the angles is the most profitable one to take.
Yeah, and candidly, I already knew this about my target, but for the sake of argument, I mentioned that in the beginning, I was torn between the safety aspect, and had I drawn out 2 bullseyes, I think I eventually would have come to the conclusion that the safety aspect, it's throwing a handful of darts at a board rather than taking one and focusing in one spot.
Right. Yeah, 100%. I think once you do it, and this is the thing that I work through with my one-on-one clients, is to say, okay, let's take a look at all of the different customer value propositions that you might have. And let's decide, because, as an inventor, how much money, time, energy, staff do you have to be able to kind of chasing, 4 different options? I kind of think about it like you get a dog that's kind of just scratching at the back door to get out. There are squirrels all over the backyard. If that dog leaves open the door, tries to chase more than one squirrel, is going to catch none. But if they go after one, my wife's actually in the studio with us today. Can't see her, but she's in the studio. Her family had a dog, this kind of overweight Broiken Spaniel. If anyone listening to that will know what kind of dog this is. Cool dog, but not the most athletic animal in the world. But they'd let it out the back door, and it would lock. It was just instinctive. It would lock eyes on one squirrel or one rabbit, and it would run it down. Mm-hmm. When you're at the center of the bullseye, it's just one target customer and one problem they're trying to solve, or one key pain. So you focus on that. When you get outside of that, the first ring is the marketing mix: product, price, place, and promotion. Those are the 4 key aspects. So you're looking at, okay, well, what product am I going to have that satisfies that need? How is it going to be priced? Who am I going to sell it through? What channel is it going to sell it through? And then what brand or advertising or promotional messages are going to be the best for that? And the whole big deal is that people think about all of these like, I have to have everything nailed down. No, just envision forward. What kind of product would satisfy that? So let's take torque strap, for instance. Let's run through the 4 Ps: product, price, place, and promotion. Let's talk about torque strap, the product, first. I think that's the easiest one, right? No ratcheting. Just pull and go. Yeah. That's how I see it.
Yeah, that's how I define it as well.
Okay, so easiest one, and for you listening to this or watching this, product is usually the easiest one. Mm-hmm. Like, okay, well, that's the whole thing you've been spending all this time thinking about. But let's talk about price. Now, don't worry about the specific price. Like, hey, it's got to be $19.99 or whatever. Don't think about that. Think about pricing strategy. What was Torque Strap's pricing strategy? Were you going to be cheaper? Were you going to be more expensive? Were you going to be what was the idea when you were thinking about how to price?
Well, I can tell you that in the beginning, we all default, unless we're seasoned and experienced, we all default to $19.95 or $24.95. The reason being we feel like imposters. But if you just take a really clear look at TorqueStrap, it is so obvious now that TorqueStrap only works in the higher price point. Small company, you're running smaller MOQs, smaller batch runs, all these barriers to entry you're going to face, your startup costs, everything. Generally speaking, I think for new inventors, the only way is the higher price point. So if we were to do it in hindsight, absolutely, we would say TorqueStrap will be the higher price point product.
I think that makes sense. I think for most inventors, you're going to be in that, going after kind of a low price point or a value price point is going to be tough when you're talking about, minimum order quantities, when you talk about all of the other things you need to do. So let's talk about channels. And there are a lot of different choices, right? There's Amazon, there's selling through your own website, selling through reps. How did you think about it with TorqueStrap?
To me, I just kind of thought, well, let's leverage what is already there, low-hanging fruit, and that is my 200 followers on social media. And it just kind of expanded from there. When I define it now, I can say with confidence that our channels are 100% social media or digital media marketing, which leads to e-commerce, because you catch them while they're on their phone and you close the deal while they're on their phone, all in the same swoop.
Yeah, 100%. I feel like a TorqueStrap really lends itself well to that. It lends itself well to, hey, it's compared with other products where you would see it on a website, on social, on Amazon. I get it. I can compare it. I can make the decision. Other viable strategies, though, could be like, hey, this needs to be, person to person. Like you need to actually sell it at a farmer's market, or you need to sell it door to door. There are a lot of different ways to do this. The whole idea is to think about that channel. That's place. That's the third P. Think about what channel, because all of those decisions kind of fit together, especially with price. Remember that, and that's why all these four are in the same ring, right? Because they all kind of interrelate with each other. So that if you've got a value price point and you're selling on Amazon, Amazon's going to be taking 25, 30, 35%. And that leaves you very little money for cost of goods sold and very little money for the fourth P, which is promotion, advertising. So when you think about TorqueStrap, what was the most effective promotional strategy? Don't think about like, hey, a specific ad or a specific message. What was the promotional strategy that you leaned into? Low
cost, high volume, meaning it costs nothing to shoot a video,
right.
and you lose nothing, if not a bit of pride, when a video flops.
Yeah, no, I loved your video strategy. What I liked about that best is TorqueStrap required demonstration.
Sure.
Like you had to see it. Like if you didn't see it, like, okay, what's ratcheting? I kind of in my mind understand what ratcheting is like. But to actually see it, like, oh, I just pull it and it's done. If you didn't see it, it doesn't seem real. That's why I loved video and I thought it made sense. So what I would write in those is, hey, product is non-ratcheting TorqueStrap, the TorqueStrap product. The pricing strategy is a premium price point. The place is digital marketing and e-commerce, and the big promotional strategy, video. Mm-hmm. Boom, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's your first ring. Mm-hmm. Simple as that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Now, it's tough for people to define these things in the beginning, and that's why I'm laying out my business, here it is.
Right.
Because this was not easy to define. This is 4 years of refinement to be able to answer these questions quickly. However, I do think that for most of us inventors, they can fall into the same realm. Now, you guys have watched a lot of the show. I know that a lot of you aren't video savvy and never have any desire to be. That is totally fine. Replace that channel with B2B, and
exactly.
Take a deep dive into that.
Yeah, I think it's in each one of these, just as it's as important to think about your target customer and their issue as one thing. You don't have 2, 3, or 4 pricing strategies. You don't have 8 channels to market. You don't have 15 different features that are critical. The TorqueStrap has a lot of different features, but the number one thing is no ratcheting.
Right.
So that's the number one thing. It's going to keep you focused and it'll kind of keep you out of overwhelm. So just like, hey, write down each one. And what if you get it wrong? Well, at least it's on there and you kind of know and you can fix it. And you can see your entire business strategy on one piece of paper will really help you know, like, okay, if I change this, I got to change this and this. You kind of understand how things hook together.
Now's a good time for you to just kind of explain the logic behind the bullseye. These things get a little less important as we expand.
Yeah, and that's why I put them that way. That's why I organized, these in the different concentric rings. For instance, in this next ring, we're going to talk about tools and software, and people are talking a lot about AI right now, and they're kind of really getting into a large language model or into, Gemini or Claude or whatever it is that they're into. They kind of get disconnected. They spend way too much time focusing on a piece of software that is kind of pretty far removed from the customer's problem. And from the product, price, place, and promotion that you're trying to kind of solve that problem with. That first ring is how you're going to satisfy that customer's problem directly, the marketing mix. The next ring out is what tools and systems are going to support you in delivering that marketing mix. And then in the final ring, it's what's the macro environment that you're sitting in. That's just fancy language for what's going on in the world right now that might impact your ability to sell that product. You have, not only are they less important, but you have less control as you go out. So we want to make sure that you focus on all the things you need to focus on, but you don't over-focus on something that is less important. And we'll get to some of those. I think you'll see as we go through, like, oh, okay, yeah. For torque strap, for instance, let's get into that next ring, which is kind of your operations side. Let's talk about supply chain. For torque strap, obviously, your supply chain is critical for delivering the product, but there are multiple ways to develop a supply chain. There are multiple suppliers you could pick, right? I mean, with torque strap, talk to me a little bit about how you thought through the supply chain.
After a couple of weeks of digging around on Alibaba, I concluded that not only what I needed to do, but what I wanted to do was to globally source about 4 components and to bring them into the U.S. to be assembled here. That conclusion came by way of trying to protect the IP in my initial runs and a few other factors, and it gave me the clout to be able to say assembled in the USA, which I thought might be on people's parameters of value. My opinion has changed since then. So to put a bow on that answer, globally sourced components assemble in the USA.
I think that makes a lot of sense. You could see, though, where there could be a lot of ways to get that done. Let's say you had 100x the volume. You might decide, I'm going to assemble everything. I'm going to source and assemble in Malaysia, for instance. Who knows? I mean, or you could source in Asia, assemble in Mexico. There are a lot of ways to do that. You kind of get what I'm getting at, that yes, supply chain is critical for all the reasons you described. You want to make sure you have good quality control. You have, a multiple and redundant supply chains for critical components, all of those sort of things. But there are a lot of ways to do that. Any good ops person will tell you that you have a primary supply chain, you have a backup supply chain. All of those things are important because the end customer, you're a little further away from the customer's problem. Do they really care if you got it from Malaysia or Thailand?
That's right.
Probably not.
And that feeds into analysis paralysis. Come on, guys, you're in getting close to the outer ring of importance on decisions, and you're tripping up over, where they're made exactly. Is it better does Cambodia look better on the box than Malaysia? Come on,
remember
guys.
That, in this inner ring, we talked about price, where if you're going to be going for a value price point and it's got to be the cheapest, then realize that supply chain becomes really important. That if you're going for it's got to be the cheapest thing, well, then I have to spend a lot more time on supply chain to make sure that I'm getting the cheapest materials that still meet my quality standards. It makes the supply chain a lot harder. If you've got a premium price point and you've got a redundant supply chain that's got more reliable delivery, but it's going to take an extra 3 days on the water, you might say, you know what, that's worth it.
Sure.
And let's do that. So let's kind of move on to kind of your business processes and operations. A lot of times what most people are talking about in here is things like customer service. There can be a lot of business processes you need to deliver, depending on what it is. If it's B2B, process becomes really critical right here. But for you, Grant, with TorqueStrap, talk to me a little bit about customer service and the approach to that.
Right. Well, it's not like you're opening a call center or you're selling insurance, right? So your customer service lifting is quite a light load. So certainly I hadn't mapped it out, but just by nature of the way that the customer service inquiries came in, I realized, okay, this is a task I can probably do for the first 6 months. And that proved to be true. And ultimately, after about a year and a half, that's when I was able to outsource that to the next level of employee, kind of let that stuff roll downhill.
Well, think about that for a second. This is that ring where it's all about how you support that group. And I'm going to skip over kind of tools and we're going to go over to people because you mentioned that this is how all those 4 things work together, right? Where the people you hire and the choices you make on outsourcing, whether they're contractors, whether they're employees, whether they're fractional, whatever you decide, this is why all these 4 things are in this ring, because you might decide with customer service that you need to make sure that you have not only have a customer service process, but you are outsourcing that to people that can do that work. Like you're going to do it at first, make sure the process is set, and then you're going to be able to outsource that. This is the first ring where you start to think, okay, someone else could be doing this for me. I don't need to do this myself. I think the closer you get to the customer, the more you want to make sure that you are, 100% in it to win it. So I like how for TorqueStrap, the people decisions you made and the process decisions you made are linked. That helps show people what this, kind of the power of the tool. Let's talk a little bit about tools and software. In this kind of business operation, were there tools or software for TorqueStrap or kind of in the TorqueStrap business that were game changers for you?
Well, certainly from a baseline, you have how do you build out your website? And when you're a high school graduate like myself, any web hosting platform like Shopify, Wix, that's going to be your number one tool. Anybody can build a backbone of a good website on a Shopify or a Wix. Now, beyond that, as times went on, you look at conversion rates and things like that. How do I acquire these customers more frequently at a low cost? Well, you want to have really good reviews on your website. So I employed the Looks Review app on my website. Why? It was $39.95 and it had decent reviews. From there, you start to work with Amazon, which is more of a place than a software. However, with Amazon, you can work with softwares like Sellerboard that can really consolidate all your data and information. I think those are the top 3 for us at this point.
I think those are software. Those 3 are going to be, I think 90% of the people watching this are going to need to deploy those 3. What I really liked about what you said was that, like, hey, Amazon is a place, it's a channel to market. But there's software that sits on top of that, not only buried inside Amazon, but third-party software you can put on top of that will help you get better data and do better analysis on where you're converting, how you're selling, which make a lot of sense. And you can see how the channel decision you made helps you determine what additional software and tools that you need. You see how that kind of fits together? Like you wouldn't pick Sellerboard without having Amazon.
Right.
Right. I mean, so it's these decisions kind of cascade and they, one kind of begets the other. That's why you focus early, because I've talked with so many entrepreneurs that just get excited about a particular AI tool or a particular review tool. That's awesome. But like, hey, you're doing 100% of your sales on Amazon. Why? Like, you should be focused on Amazon reviews. This other tool isn't going to do anything for you. Why are you paying for that? Why are you putting it? It's not just the money, the $39 a month or whatever it costs. It's the time and the mind share that you put into it. That's the real thing you got to pay attention to, especially in this ring. And here's what's tricky about this ring before we move on is this is the ring that looks like progress. This is the most dangerous ring in the bullseye, because when you spend too much time here, because you're in control, this is the first place where you're like, hey, you're the one calling the shots on, someone's trying to sell you on their software, and it can make you feel important. It can make you feel like you've done a lot of work, but in reality, you're pretty far away from the customer and their need. It's important to get it right, but you can't spend too much time here.
Gotcha. Remind the listeners, what ring are we in right now? We're in the outer ring?
We're in the third ring. So we had the first ring was our target customer, the Bullseye, the first level. Okay. Second ring, the first ring that surrounds it is the marketing mix: product, price, place, and promotion. The next ring out, we go that's your operations ring. That's level 3. And that has your supply chain, your business processes, customer service, things like that, tools and software, and your people, whether they're contract or full-time employees, or whether they're, service providers of whatever type. They all go in there. And we don't want to list, like, here are the 15 employees we need, the janitor, the accountant, like, no. Who is the most important people you need? So in your case, if it's fulfillment, like, hey, we got to make sure that the fulfillment people, have their stuff together. Great. If it's customer service, okay, great. Those are the most important. You will have other people.
Yeah.
You'll have other needs. Don't worry about every piece of software. What's the most critical thing that supports the Bullseye, that supports that target customer and what they need?
Love it. So now we're approaching the outer ring. I think this is going to be my favorite because it's kind of ironic. You have 4 rings and they really associate well with the years of my business. And now I'm in year 4. And so this outer ring, I may be the most apt to speak on. So let's dig into it.
Yeah, dig in. This is the business environment. What's going on in the world? And you don't control what happens here. That's the idea. The whole idea behind this ring is you don't control, you can influence, and you can react to this. But to think that you can control your competition, you can't. You can control the vibe that's going on, kind of what's happening right now, what's the zeitgeist going on, whatever word you want to use, time and timing. You can't control that. You can't control the legal regulatory environment. New tariffs, new regs, lack of regulations, all of those things can benefit or hurt you. You can't control them. And you can't control what's going on in the macro environment. That, like, hey, all of a sudden we go into a recession. You can't control that. You as a business can't control that. You know what? Your job isn't to, like, well, I'm not successful because of the macro environment. You know what? That's way far out on the outside of the ring. Like, you should be ready to react to that. But it's all about, like, if you've done your work inside, these things should be pretty easy. So let's start with competition first. What was the most important thing for you from a competition perspective now in year 4? Who's TorqueStrap's biggest competitor?
Well, anything you can use to strap something down is a competitor. That's something I knew from the beginning. But what was interesting and what you outlined in the Google Doc you sent when you and I were prepping for this video was sometimes competitors can be friends. And that has proven so true, so much more than I thought. They're more than willing to take meetings in some cases after you have some clout, of course.
Right.
They're kind of willing to collab, possibly finally get that licensing deal that we all dreamed of in the beginning.
Exactly.
And they can sometimes offer insider tips, like maybe their manufacturer. You never know what you're going to get out of these people. So, we just got knocked off in Australia. And our Australian distributors freaking out. I say, guys, let's find the silver lining. What kind of videos are they making? And what ideas can we take from that? What language are they using to sell the straps? And how can we iterate on that? And how are they building the straps? Maybe they're building them 10% more efficient than us. They already knocked us off, so I'd say it's fair game. And, so when it comes to competition, know them. Don't think that they're not your competition. They all are. But also, friends close, enemies closer, right?
Yeah, I love the God. If I could rename that, the Godfather principle. Keep your friends close, keep your enemies closer.
Yeah.
You have to understand what's going on. I liked what you said, that everyone who's strapping something down, you got a bundle of twine is a competitor.
Yeah.
Closing getting a topper for your truck is a competitor.
Absolutely.
So all of those things are competitors, and you got to pay attention to all of those. So, what I put in the Google Doc for you was, hey, what if you had, could you cooperate? We think about competition. I like to think about co-opetition. So if you've got a trailer manufacturer, can you approach a trailer manufacturer with hey, sell the torque strap along with your trailer? Or can I co-market with that? Or can I use, hey, if I know people are buying trailers, can I buy those keywords so that people see that alongside it? So I like how you're thinking about it, that learn from your competition, keep them close, try to find deals, try to work deals with them, realizing, of course, that they are trying to make a buck at your expense. But
Absolutely.
if you could make a buck or they could make a buck, or if together you could make three, let's go make three.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, all right. Next is kind of timing, vibe, zeitgeist. What's going on in the world right now that impacts TorqueStrap, from a, kind of what's going on, like kind of what are people thinking about?
Sure. Well, we're obviously that COVID hangover has treated some people in the outdoor space really well. So I'll focus on that one, right? People, even during COVID, right away, for some reason, we all wanted to go camping. That kind of hasn't ended. And then that introduced me to the space of overlanders, hikers, backpackers, recreational vehicle enthusiasts, you name it. And it still holds true. People, they still have all those toys they bought during COVID. They still want to go pitch the tent, right? So we lean into that heavily. I think that's a great example of kind of a global vibe, or at least a U.S. vibe that we latch onto.
Absolutely. I mean, and to my knowledge, you had no hand in starting COVID.
No, but I was in the right place at the right time. I had a product.
That's the thing. So, and sometimes just timing is like that, and you just got to pay attention. When you see something happen, you got to be ready to jump on it, because there's no way to control that. But, when you see, wow, we all have to be inside, people want to go out camping, I got to be ready to jump on that. No hesitation. And if you've done all your homework to get to that point, that's why, hey, these are things that, people think about these things like, well, I can't control the environment. I can't control the economy. I can't control regulations. No, you can't control them. You can take advantage of them.
Sure.
Though when they happen. So you got to be ready. This is kind of the readiness ring of the Bullseye. Mm-hmm. It's the macro environment, but you got to be ready. You got to be poised to take advantage of opportunities when they come up.
Sure.
So let's hit this legal regulatory. I know sometimes I put intellectual property in here too. And the reason I don't focus on intellectual property is intellectual property is kind of a support to the whole thing. Like having a patent, awesome. That's it's great that you do. I have seen so many businesses succeed without any at all. They focus on a trademark or a trade secret. So when you think about your intellectual property portfolio, your patents, trademark, trade secret, and copyrights, those are the four types. It doesn't always have to be a patent. So what I like to focus on here is legal and regulatory environment. So is there a new law in Florida or in Denver, or Denver's a city, Colorado, or in Canada that says, if you don't strap things down with this approved torque, that you're liable for this and that? Or is there an insurance company that's going to get up in your business? So what about the legal regulatory environment for TorqueStrap?
Yeah, so definitely there's DOT regulations that kind of govern the federal, and then there's state level regulations, and that's kind of left not to discretion, but that's enforced by your highway patrols and things of that nature. So you got to look at, is there training programs in place? Is there guidebooks, or maybe even it's just a independent safety industry company, if you will, that helps to protect employees or drivers, whatever the case may be? And do they lay out guidelines and handbooks? And can we become part of that situation?
Yeah, when I was early on in my career, one of my first jobs as a product manager was to try to get our product on spec. And what that meant was I was in fiber optic cabling. So our job was to get our cable assemblies on the specification that the contractor wrote or that the architect wrote. A lot of medical device companies absolutely take advantage of this. They know that, hey, there's a Medicare funding code. And if you're in medical device, you know exactly what I'm talking about. There's a code for that. It specifies a certain specification and a certain amount of reimbursement that they're going to give. So this is where you're thinking about that regulatory environment. What you don't want to do is say, well, that supersedes what the customer needs. This is something that can supercharge what's already there. So let's say that TorqueStrap, you gave training to all the Florida Department of Transportation, state troopers. say, this is how you should properly strap things down, and you're using torque strap. When that guy pulls over someone who's got some janky ass trailer set up, he says, you know what? You should be looking at torque strap because it works like this. That guy's going to go out and buy them. Mm-hmm. It's that sort of idea where you're trying to find a way to take advantage of the regulatory environment. Last thing is the economy. So, and I hear from inventors all the time, like, well, this is a good time or this is not a good time because the economy is good or the economy is bad. It's, you know what? There is never going to be a perfect time. But, and since you launched TorqueStrap, the economy has gone through all kinds of gyrations. Talk to me a little bit about how the economy, kind of general economy, impacts TorqueStrap.
Well, when you start a business in COVID, for the rest of your career, you're never going to know which way is up or down. That's one benefit of starting during COVID. So I have no point of reference to say, oh, well, this is a rough time. As far as the economy with TorqueStrap, no matter what, it's a day-to-day marketing battle that you face. And as I said, it's kind of all you know when you look at it day by day, because you can't just put a blanket statement on how you're going to reach people and think that that is going to survive the test of time for 10 years. In 10 years, you're going to have 3 dips, knock on wood, hopefully not a pandemic, whatever can happen in 10 years. So for me, COVID was a big one. Right now, tariffs and made in USA is a big bugaboo or a big topic, right? So how do we lean into that, or how do we take advantage of that? Well, some of our competitors are moving their factories maybe in a hurry, maybe prematurely.
Right.
And there will be a ripple effect. They may be out of stock in 6 months because they put a chink in their chain. We chose to eat it on the tariffs and keep the products going, keep the Amazon ranking. So economically, health, globally, socially, so much can vary. That's how we've dealt with those, small examples of changes in the economy.
Yeah, I think that's the reason that I put it all out on this outer ring is these are uncontrollables. And you're not going to know, but think about what you said there, that, hey, we wanted to make sure we had place and TorqueStrap had ranking. That's a channel discussion. Now, in order to fulfill that, there's a supply chain implication, right? That, okay, there might be some legal regulatory tariff things going on that might impact the supply chain. Okay, helps you, decide if you've got a primary and a secondary backup for supply chain. Is there a way that, hey, if Malaysia's got 35% tariffs and Singapore has 15% tariffs and you could shift, okay, you're prepared. And really, the macro and micro economy, at the price point, you're talking about for TorqueStrap, you're not buying a home, you're not buying a car. This is a discretionary purchase that's, that helps facilitate you getting out and kind of enjoying this kind of new hobby that you figured out during COVID. I wouldn't worry about it too much. Just, it's something that you can pay attention to. And hey, if the economy is going really bad, say, okay, well, maybe I lean into that with my messaging a little bit and help people see the value in getting this product, and when things are really good, well, maybe there's a different angle that I take. But it's something you kind of react to and you adjust. But if you've completed this bullseye, which you have for TorqueStrap, you can start to see whatever happens. You've got alternatives and like, hey, the competition's okay, but it's not more important than the price I set or my pricing strategy. Mm-hmm. And you're not kind of making something more important than it should be. That's the value of this. And we did this in about 35 minutes with a little bit of fluff and buff on either side. You can do this by yourself with a sheet of paper in 15 minutes. I promise.
Absolutely. I've humored you long enough, Jason, but now I'm going to ambush you, man, because
I love it.
What a phony you are. Why didn't you put financing and funding at the center of that bullseye?
Here's the thing. If I've got my bullseye ready, now I know what kind of money I need. Until you do this, you don't know what to go ask for. Do you really need $25,000 in bridge funding that you can maybe get with a credit card or a personal loan? Or do you really need $1.2 million that you better be approaching an angel investor for? until you really understand what the entire business looks like, how do you know what to go ask for? How do you know what resources you need? And I can promise you, every angel investor, every bank, every person you're going to approach is going to ask you all these questions in one form or another. And if you don't have a good answer, you're not going to get funding. Mm-hmm. So that's another one of the values to doing multiple bullseyes. If I've got 4 different customer needs I could go after, and you do 3 of them and they all require over $1 million in capital, and the last one requires $30,000 in capital that you can maybe self-finance or bootstrap, I'd do that one, at least to get started, and then generate your cash flow. And then maybe you maybe learn that you didn't really need 1.2 million. You only needed 200,000, but you're at a point at the business now where you could self-finance that and you could kind of step up to the next level where you don't have to go beg for money.
Gotcha. And the guide that you wrote, that you shared with me, is that on your Substack or what? Can people find that?
Yeah, people will be able to find that. I'm building a new website that will help kind of generate and give people all of these resources, all of these tools. So that links will all be in the description, so you can go get it.
Sweet. And you wrote AI prompts, which I love, about each of these items on the Bullseye.
Yeah.
Exactly what to ask AI, who you are, what you do, and give me multiple options there, ChatGPT.
Yeah, I found that, it's once you get the hang of this, after you do this once or twice and you've got it up on your whiteboard and you're like, I got it. I don't need ChatGPT anymore. But what I saw is as people were going through this, they'd get stuck. And if I'm working with someone one-on-one, I can say, okay, stop for a second. Let's talk about supply chain options. And I can give people 10 or 12 options. I'm doing this for 25 years. I've seen all of these options. But if I'm not there sitting next to you, you'd get stuck on it, or you might not think of a different option. Well, that's what AI is good for. Let it spit out a bunch of options. It doesn't mean it's right. Most the responses you're going to get are going to be wrong or BS, but you'll know. Like this, AI is just there to generate some ideas for you, and then you're the one who picks. Like, oh no, based on my customer and based on this that I'm going to Amazon, this is the piece of software that I need. Got it. That'll be helpful. But like, oh man, I didn't think of that, or I didn't think about going in that direction. That's what it's perfect for. So yeah, it's why I wrote the AI prompts for it, because I couldn't be there. So my challenge was I can't be there one-on-one with everyone. I can't be there for everybody. How could I write something that would help let people do it on their own?
Perfect. Love it. Well, there you have it, folks. That's episode 57 of the Invent With Me podcast, the Innovator's Bullseye. Thank you again, Jason, for putting pen to paper, because that's something I struggle with, and I know the listeners are going to have fun with that. If you're watching on YouTube, subscribe. If you're listening to the podcast, leave a rating, like the show, do whatever you got to do. Thanks for listening, guys, and we will see you on the next one.